My dad told everyone I was mentally unstable, but what they don't know is I sent him to jail. That's not a line you just throw out. That's the kind of sentence that makes people stop breathing for a second, but it's the truth. And the truth doesn't care if you're ready. My name's Jake. I'm 17. I live in Houston, Texas. And this is the story of the moment my whole world cracked open like a damn fault line. It started at dinner. My mom's old lasagna recipe was on the table, the one she used to make before she wasn't around anymore. My dad sat there like a king on a throne, barking orders about posture, school, manners like always. And me? I was just trying to survive the noise in my head. He looked straight at me, sneered, and said, "Don't forget to take your meds, Jake. Wouldn't want another one of your crazy episodes, right?" The room went cold. My aunt giggled nervously. My cousin looked down at her plate. No one said a word. But inside me, something screamed. That was the line. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the broken one. He was. I had spent years letting him control the narrative. He told people I was emotional, fragile, dramatic. I believed it, until that second. You ever have one of those moments where something sharp slices through the fog in your mind and suddenly everything's clear? I stood up. My chair scraped the tile. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked to my room, locked the door, and opened the drawer where I kept my journal and the little audio recorder I used for school projects. My hands were shaking, but my mind? Sharp as hell. I whispered to myself, "You're not crazy. He's just scared of your voice." That night, I started recording everything, and that's when things began to unravel. Because when you've been quiet for so long, the sound of your own voice finally rising? That's power. That's the moment everything changed. And if you think this story ends with a neat little bow, think again. This is just the beginning. To understand the line that broke me, you have to go all the way back. Back to when I was just 4 years old. It was my birthday. I remember the balloons, red, blue, green, floating above the table. I was wearing this dorky little paper crown from Party City, the kind kids wear before they realize the world isn't safe. My mom was icing the cake. My cousins were giggling in the yard. It was the one day I thought maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. But then the music stopped, and I heard his voice. "Jake, what the hell is this mess?" He was holding a juice box I'd knocked over by accident. I froze. My hands went cold. Everyone else went quiet, like they knew what came next. He grabbed me, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to make the room spin, took me inside, closed the door. Then he knelt down to my face and whispered, "Crying is for weak people. You want to be weak, Jake?" I remember nodding no, not because I understood, but because I was terrified. From that moment on, I learned one thing. Feelings weren't safe. Not in that house. My dad worshipped toughness like it was a religion. He believed silence was strength. Anger was control. And emotions? Emotions were liabilities. He never hit with fists. He hit with silence, with looks, with words sharp enough to scar. If I cried, he'd mock me. If I laughed too loud, he'd accuse me of showing off. If I got too quiet, he'd tell me I was weird like Mom. It wasn't just abuse. It was training. He molded me into something numb, something quiet. And the scariest part? I didn't even realize it was happening. I just thought that's how boys became men in Texas. No therapy, no feelings, just grit. By the time I turned 10, I stopped celebrating birthdays. They felt more like countdowns than milestones. But that trauma, it didn't stay locked in that house. It followed me. Into school, into friendships, into every relationship I touched. Because when you're raised to fear your own emotions, you end up fearing yourself. And that's the thing about trauma. It doesn't announce itself. It hides in your smile. It waits in silence. But eventually, it catches up to you. And for me, it came back the night I said I'm in therapy. That's when everything exploded. But we're not there yet. By the time I hit 6, I stopped crying. Not because I stopped feeling, but because I learned that silence was safer. You see, my dad didn't teach me lessons like most parents do. He didn't sit me down and explain right from wrong. No bedtime stories. No talks about courage or kindness. He used fear. Quiet, calculated fear. There was this one time, I must have been around 7. I left a horror movie playing on TV by accident. It was one of those messed up ones with jump scares and creepy kids whispering in hallways. I didn't mean to, I swear. But he walked in, saw it, and just stared at me. didn't yell, didn't speak. He turned off the TV, walked into the garage, came back with a trash bag, and threw away every toy I owned. Every single one. No explanation, no second chance. Just gone. And then he said, "This is what happens when you fill your head with garbage. Maybe next time you'll think." There was no next time. I started living like a ghost in my own house. I memorized his footsteps, learned to tell his mood by the way the front door shut. I could tell when to speak, when to disappear, and when to fake a smile so good it hurt. He weaponized silence. If I forgot to rinse a dish or left my light on, he wouldn't speak to me for days. No punishment, just complete emotional shutdown. It was like I didn't exist. And when you're a kid, that kind of silence? It screams louder than words. At school, I was the quiet kid. Teachers called me respectful. Other kids called me weird. I wasn't weird. I was trained. Trained not to react. Trained to smile when I was dying inside. Trained to be good. But not me. And here's the twist. He didn't think he was doing anything wrong. In his mind, he was raising a man. In Texas, boys are taught to man up before they even learn how to name what they're feeling. But that training? It didn't make me stronger. It made me hollow. And when you hollow a kid out long enough, eventually, something dark fills the space. I didn't know it yet, but I was already disappearing from the inside out. And then came Ryan. Before I completely disappeared, there was one person who kept me grounded. Ryan. My older brother, my protector, my best friend. He was 3 years older, but he felt like a whole other world ahead of me. Where I was quiet, he was loud. Where I flinched, he stood firm. He didn't take our dad's crap. And when Dad got too close, too cold, too cruel, Ryan would step between us. Always. I remember one night, I was maybe 8. Dad was yelling over grades or chores or something pointless. I was holding back tears, doing everything I could to stay strong. And Ryan just snapped. He got between us and said, "Back off. He's a kid, not your punching bag." That was the first time I saw fear in my father's eyes. Not because Ryan was big or scary, but because he couldn't control him. Ryan was proof that the cycle could be broken. And for a while, I believed I'd grow up to be like him. But cycles don't break that easy. It was Halloween. Ryan had just turned 16. He'd borrowed a friend's beat-up Chevy to drive us home from a party. I remember the smell of the fake blood on my costume, the way the Texas wind felt through the half-open window, the sound of his playlist skipping tracks. And then, headlights. Screeching. Metal folding like paper. They told me I survived because I was in the back seat, asleep. Ryan didn't make it. The funeral was quiet. Too quiet. Dad didn't shed a tear. Didn't speak Ryan's name for weeks. Just stood there like stone, gripping the edge of the casket like it might bite him. After that, something in me snapped. But not in the way you'd think. I didn't explode, I didn't cry. I just shut down. And Dad? He used it. Told people I was taking it like a man. Said Ryan was too emotional anyway. That maybe it's better I learned young what pain really is. And for a long time, I believed him. I thought grief was weakness. I thought loving someone that much was dangerous. So I buried every feeling with Ryan, deep. But the thing about buried emotions is, they don't stay buried. They just wait. And eventually, they come back louder than ever. After Ryan died, I didn't just lose a brother. I lost the only person who made me feel human. And without him, I had no buffer. No shield. Just me and Dad. Alone. And in that silence, something in me broke in a way I couldn't name back then. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even ask why. I just shut it all off. That's when the numbness began. At first, it looked harmless. I ate more. Anything with sugar, fat, salt. Food made me feel something, even if it was guilt. I'd sit in the dark with a sleeve of Oreos and a spoonful of peanut butter, telling myself I wasn't hungry. I just didn't want to feel anymore. Then came the nights I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Dad's footsteps pacing down the hall. I started skipping breakfast, skipping showers, skipping conversations. I wasn't lazy. I was disappearing. By 14, I was almost 200 pounds. Teachers stopped calling on me. Friends stopped inviting me to anything. I was the kid with blank eyes, dark hoodies, and earbuds always in, except I wasn't listening to music. Just silence. White noise, static. Dad said I looked soft, that I was losing my edge. He'd poke my stomach and call it motivation. Said Ryan wouldn't have let himself get like this. I laughed when he said that. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I'd scream. So I laughed. I joked about my weight, called myself a tank, said I liked being invisible, said feelings were for people who didn't know how the world worked. Truth is, I was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending I wasn't broken. From carrying grief like it was a secret only I was allowed to have. But here's the thing about pretending you're okay. Eventually, you forget what okay even means. I didn't realize it then, but I wasn't surviving. I was self-destructing in slow motion. And the worst part? No one noticed. Because when you're quiet, obedient, and still breathing, people assume you're fine. But I wasn't fine. I was drowning, just doing it silently. And in that silence, something small began to shift. Because one day, someone finally noticed, and they handed me a flyer that would change everything. It was the last place I expected anything to change. A fluorescent-lit hallway outside the school counselor's office. I wasn't even there for me. I was turning in a late homework slip when she caught me. "Jake, right?" she said, gentle but firm, like she already knew I was walking around with a ticking bomb inside. I nodded, avoiding eye contact, just trying to leave. But then she handed me this folded-up piece of paper. Nothing fancy, just a flyer. A dumb little school flyer. "Feeling overwhelmed?" it said. "Free student therapy available, confidential, safe." Safe. That word hit harder than anything my dad had ever said. I stuffed it in my pocket, planning to toss it, but I didn't. For some reason, I couldn't. That night, I read it under my covers like it was contraband. My hands were sweating, my stomach twisted. I wasn't the kind of person who went to therapy. Not in my house, not in Texas, not with him as my father. He used to say therapy was for weak people. Talkers. He said talking never fixed anything. But the next week, I found myself sitting in a small, windowless room, staring at a potted plant and a woman named Ms. Torres who looked more like someone's cool aunt than a therapist. I didn't say much. Not the first time. Or the second. But she didn't push. She just waited. Like she knew I had something to say and was willing to sit in silence until I said it. Week by week, I started showing up. Still in secret. Always lying about where I was going. Detention, I'd tell Dad. Study group. He never asked questions. He just liked hearing I wasn't causing trouble. Funny how therapy became my rebellion. And even though I barely spoke, something was happening. My chest didn't feel so tight. My thoughts didn't race as fast. I started noticing things, like how I clenched my fists during dinner, or held my breath walking into rooms. Ms. Torres said, "Noticing is the first step to healing." I rolled my eyes, but deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't healing yet. Not even close. But it was the first time in years I didn't feel completely numb. And for the first time in forever, I started to wonder, what if I wasn't broken? What if I was just wounded? And what if healing wasn't weakness? What if it was the bravest thing I could do? It didn't happen all at once. There was no big emotional breakthrough, no sobbing on the couch moment like you see in the movies. Healing crept in quietly, like sunlight slipping through cracked blinds after a long night. It started with a journal. Ms. Torres gave it to me after our third session. Soft leather cover, blank pages. "You don't have to talk," she said. "Just write what you feel, even if it's just one word." The first page sat empty for days. But then one night after dinner, after Dad threw another passive-aggressive jab about my weird moods, I picked it up, and I wrote one word. Angry. That was it. The next day, I wrote 2 words. Still angry. Then came sentences, paragraphs, whole pages filled with things I never said out loud, things I was afraid even to think. Rage, fear, shame, longing. I wrote like I was bleeding onto the paper. Like if I didn't get it out, it would eat me alive. And somehow that helped. Then came the crying. Not the dramatic kind. No screaming, no punching walls, just quiet tears at 2 a.m., lying on the floor in my room, feeling everything I'd stuffed down for years rise like floodwater. It was terrifying, it was embarrassing. But it was real. I started breathing deeper, noticing the way my chest rose when I let myself feel, instead of fight it. I even tried meditating. Don't laugh. I found this YouTube channel with 5-minute guided meditations. At first, I rolled my eyes so hard they nearly got stuck. But then, something weird happened. After a few days, the silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like peace. And in that stillness, I started to remember things. Ryan's laugh, my mom's humming in the kitchen, the smell of vanilla candles she used to burn when she read. Memories I thought I'd buried came back, not to haunt me, but to remind me that I had once felt safe, loved, and that maybe, just maybe, I could feel that again. I wasn't healed, far from it. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was becoming someone again. Not the version my dad tried to force, not the ghost I had turned into, someone real. And that scared me, because real people feel, and feeling would soon get me in more trouble than I ever imagined. I should have kept it to myself. I knew better. But something in me, maybe hope, maybe recklessness, told me to try. It was a Tuesday, chicken fried steak night. The kind of meal where no one talks about anything real. Where Dad chews loud and Aunt Karen nods politely like everything's normal, like we're not all pretending the air isn't thick with secrets. But I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I said it. I've been going to therapy. Forks hit plates, knives stopped cutting. The TV in the other room felt louder than ever. Dad looked up slowly, like a predator sniffing weakness. "What did you just say?" I repeated it. My voice didn't even shake. "I go to therapy." For a split second, I saw something in his eyes. Not anger, not even confusion, disgust. Like I'd told him I was contagious. Then it exploded. "So what, you sit around whining to some stranger? Is that what you do now? Make up stories about your poor little childhood?" He slammed his fist on the table. The salt shaker tipped over. Aunt Karen muttered something like, "Not now," but she didn't move. "You think feelings fix anything?" He yelled. "You think weakness makes you a man?" My hands clenched under the table, but I stayed still. I didn't flinch. That only made him angrier. "You ungrateful little freak." That's when he stood up. Fast. Too fast. I rose before I even knew why. Maybe instinct, maybe muscle memory. But this time, I didn't back down. "Don't touch me." Those 3 words hung in the air like lightning. He froze. Then he laughed, cold, bitter, sharp, like the idea of me standing up to him was a joke. But his eyes weren't laughing. He stepped forward anyway. And that's when I reached into my hoodie pocket and hit the button. Recording. I had it all now. "You're threatening me in my own house?" he barked. "I'm protecting myself in mine," I said back. That was the last thing I said before I walked into the hallway, phone in hand, and called 911. My voice didn't shake, I didn't cry, because this time, I wasn't the scared kid begging to be heard. I was the son finally speaking. And for once, someone was listening. After the cops took him away, the house didn't feel like victory. It felt like a war zone after the bombs stopped falling. Quiet, smoky, wrecked. I didn't pack much. Just my hoodie, my journal, and a duffel bag with clothes that didn't fit right anymore. CPS didn't ask many questions. They just said I'd be staying with Aunt Karen. Temporarily, they said. Like healing could happen on a deadline. Her house in San Antonio was nothing like Houston. 2 hours away, but it felt like a different planet. Quiet neighborhood, perfectly trimmed lawns. One of those neighborhoods where everyone waves but no one really talks. Safe, in theory. But safety doesn't feel real when your body's still bracing for the next hit. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Cinnamon and old carpet. Not bad, just unfamiliar. And that unfamiliarity made everything feel wrong. She gave me the guest room, clean sheets, neatly folded towels, a framed photo of a sunset on the wall. Like that could replace everything I'd just lost. We didn't talk much at first. Karen wasn't unkind. She just didn't know what to do with me. She'd say things like, "Let me know if you need anything." But her eyes said, "Please don't." There was this cat, Mr. Whiskers. Fat, orange, slightly cross-eyed. He'd sit on the windowsill in my room and stare at me like he knew I didn't belong. Honestly, he was the only one who didn't pretend. I'd lay in bed at night, listening to the soft hum of her dishwasher and wondering how long it would take before she regretted saying yes. I was polite. I ate dinner. I said thank you. I cleaned my plate. But I could feel it in the way she tiptoed around me, like I was a guest in my own trauma. And maybe I was. The strangest part? I missed him. Not the rage, not the fear, but the routine, the known, the chaos I understood. This silence felt foreign, like a kindness I hadn't earned. I started journaling again, not just about pain, but about confusion, guilt, loneliness. It was the first time I realized that leaving didn't fix you. Sometimes leaving just gives the wound space to breathe. But even in that breathing room, I wasn't safe. Because even in a new house, his voice found a way back in, and it came through the one person I never thought would betray me. It started with whispers. Late one night, I got up for water. The house was dark except for a soft glow coming from the kitchen. I heard Aunt Karen's voice, low, careful, like she didn't want anyone hearing. At first, I thought she was talking to herself, but then I heard it. His voice. He's exaggerating. You know how dramatic he gets. My stomach dropped. I pressed my back to the wall and listened, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. They blew everything out of proportion, Dad continued. You know I would never hurt him. And then Karen, my Karen, sighed and said, I just want this to be over. He's been through a lot, but he's still your son. Your son. Not my nephew. Not the kid I'm protecting. Just a burden passed from one adult to another like a chore no one signed up for. I don't remember going back to bed. I don't remember if I cried. All I remember is the cold. How even in that warm, tidy house, I felt like I was back in the freezing silence of my old home, invisible again. That night broke something in me I hadn't even realized was still whole. Trust. Aunt Karen had been my one refuge, the person I thought was safe. And now she was making secret calls to the man who shattered me, not to confront him, not to hold him accountable, but to keep peace. That's what betrayal looks like when it's quiet. It doesn't scream. It whispers behind your back. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, made pancakes, smiled too much, asked if I wanted to go to Target. I smiled back, said I was fine, but inside, I was done. I started locking my door, keeping my journal hidden in the lining of my backpack. I stopped therapy. What was the point if even the people who were supposed to protect you didn't believe your truth? That's the thing about trauma. It doesn't just come from violence. Sometimes it comes from silence. From watching people you trusted choose comfort over confrontation. And now I knew I was alone. Again. But this time I wasn't going to break. Because if no one would stand for me, I'd have to stand for myself. Even if it meant uncovering the one thing everyone wanted buried. The truth. It started with a creak, one of those old house sounds that makes you stop mid-step. I was grabbing a hoodie from the laundry room when I heard it, above me. Faint but clear. The attic. I'd never been up there. Karen always kept it shut tight with one of those old brass latches, like it was holding something in. But that night, something told me to look. Maybe I needed to find something that was mine. Something true. Something no one could lie about. So I climbed up. Quietly. Carefully. The air was thick with dust and old insulation. Boxes stacked like tombstones. Most were labeled Christmas, tax stuff, Lisa's things. Lisa. My mom. My heart stopped. I hadn't said her name out loud in years. I opened the box. Inside were journals. Dozens. Some tied with ribbon, others loose, pages bent and worn. There were VHS tapes too, labeled in her handwriting. Jake, first birthday. Ryan's first steps. March 1998. Private. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed everything and brought it down to my room like it was contraband. Plugged the old VCR Karen kept in the guest room into the tiny TV. The tape whirred. There she was, my mom. Younger than I remembered. Sitting at the kitchen table. Her voice calm but shaky. She looked into the camera like she knew I'd watch this one day. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it to say these things in person. I froze. She continued. Your dad wasn't always like this, but something changed. He started watching me, accusing me, calling me weak. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how. I was scared. For you, for Ryan, for me. She looked down, wiped a tear. If he's still controlling things when you're older, Jake, don't believe what he says about me, or about you. You're not weak, you're sensitive, you feel. That's your gift. Don't let him take that from you. The screen went black, and I just sat there, completely still, like the air had been knocked out of me. My mom had tried to escape too, and maybe she never made it. Everything I thought I knew about her, about him, about my own memories, shattered. He didn't just hurt me, he broke her. And suddenly, the question that had haunted me for years was back. Stronger than ever, did my dad kill her? And if he did, what would I do next? Because now I had proof. And I had nothing left to lose. The second tape wasn't labeled like the others, just a strip of black electrical tape across the top. No date, no handwriting. I almost didn't play it. But something in me needed to know. Needed to hear her voice one more time. The screen flickered and there she was, sitting in the same kitchen, but this time her hair was messier, her eyes darker. She looked older, more tired, like hope had been scraped thin. She stared into the lens for a few seconds, then she spoke. "Jake, if you're watching this, then I didn't make it out." My throat tightened. "Your father, he's not well. He hides it from everyone. But behind closed doors, he's someone else. Controlling, dangerous." Her voice trembled. "I tried to leave. I tried to take you and Ryan. But he found out. Said if I ever walked out that door, I'd never see either of you again." She reached down, picked up a letter. My name written in big block letters. She held it to her chest. "I wanted to give you this when you were older, but I don't know if I'll ever get the chance." She looked off screen, like she'd heard something, then turned back quickly. "Don't let him tell you who you are. Don't let him twist your mind like he did mine. You are not broken. You're brave. You're bright. And Jake, if anything ever happens to me, don't believe it was an accident." That line hit me like a freight train. She knew. She knew she was in danger, and nobody listened. Nobody helped. She left that message like a time capsule of warning, buried beneath years of silence. Then came the last words I'll never forget, spoken low, but sharp like glass. "You have to find your own truth, even if it costs you everything." The screen went black. I sat there in the dark, shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. She had tried to fight back. She had tried to protect us. And now it was my turn. No more questions. No more silence. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never was. It was about her. It was about truth. And it was about finally finishing what she never got the chance to. Because now I had her voice, and soon the whole world would hear it. After watching those tapes, something inside me snapped, but not the way it had before. This time it didn't break me. It focused me. For the first time in my life, I had a mission. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about exposing the truth. About taking back the story my dad had twisted for years. About me, about my mom, about everything. I knew he'd come back. It was only a matter of time. Men like him don't let go of control. They circle, they wait, they strike when they think you're weak again. So I started preparing. I downloaded an app that could record calls in the background. I hid a backup phone under my bed, always charged. I kept a voice recorder clipped into the lining of my backpack, sewn behind the strap. I didn't trust the cloud. I didn't trust anyone. So every night I uploaded the audio to 3 different flash drives and stashed them in separate places. One in my sock drawer, one in the attic under the insulation, and one taped behind a loose tile in the bathroom. I became obsessed with documenting everything. Every call he made, every voicemail he left, every time Aunt Karen picked up the phone and said, "He's just confused." I hit record. Every time she asked me to be understanding, I wrote it down. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. One night, I even got him screaming through the phone, calling me a liar, a coward, telling me I'd regret turning on my own blood. It was perfect. The kind of unfiltered rage you can't fake. The kind of proof that can't be denied. But I wasn't just gathering evidence for court or CPS, I was building a case for truth. Because abusers don't just leave bruises, they leave confusion. They make you doubt your own memories. They make the world question your reality. But a recording doesn't lie. So I kept going, quiet, focused, unshaken. And with every file I saved, every second of audio burned into a drive, I felt myself growing stronger. Not angrier, just clearer. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. And I knew it wouldn't be long before he showed up again. But this time, I wouldn't be the broken boy hiding behind silence. This time, I'd have the truth on record. And when it hit the light, it would burn. It happened on a Thursday. Late. Too late for visitors. The kind of hour where the world's supposed to be quiet, when you think nothing bad can happen because everyone's already asleep. I was in my room, headphones in, reviewing audio files when I heard it. 3 hard knocks on the front door. Not polite. Not hesitant. Just forceful. Aunt Karen called out, "Who is it?" Then silence. I peeked through the crack in my door, heart hammering. She stepped closer to the entrance, and that's when I saw it. Him. Dad. No warning, no notice, just there. "I need to see my son." Karen froze. She stammered something about court orders, about it not being a good idea. But he didn't care. He pushed right past her like she was made of paper. And then, he was in the house. In my space. I backed up fast, grabbed my backup phone from under the mattress, hit record, and stuffed it in my hoodie pocket. My hands were trembling, but my mind? Crystal clear. He stormed into my room like he owned it. "You think you're a man now?" He barked. "Recording phone calls? Lying to the police? You think that makes you strong?" I didn't answer. I just stood there. For the first time, I looked him dead in the eyes and didn't flinch. That made him snap. He shoved my desk chair out of the way, grabbed my backpack, tore it open, dumped everything on the floor. My notebooks, my flash drive, even my old journal. "Where is it?" he growled. "You think you're gonna destroy me with a couple tapes and some teenage tantrums?" I took a slow step back toward the door. That's when he grabbed my wrist, hard. And for a second, everything went still. But I'd already planned for this. I shouted, loud enough for the neighbors. "Let go of me!" And thank God someone heard. Because a few moments later, flashing red and blue lights lit up the living room window like salvation. He let go and turned just as 2 officers burst through the door. And this time, I wasn't the scared kid with no proof. I had the evidence, the threats, the trespassing, the aggression, every word, every move. And now, they had no choice but to listen. Because finally, the truth wasn't just mine to carry. It was recorded. And it was real. The moment the cops walked in, he tried to flip the script, like he always did. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. Hands raised, voice suddenly calm. "I'm just here to talk to my son." Classic dad move. Charm the room, take control, pretend nothing ever happened. But this time, it didn't work. One of the officers, Officer Ramirez, stepped between us. He looked at me, really looked, like he could see the fear behind my stillness, the years buried in my silence. "You okay, son?" he asked. I nodded slowly. Then I pulled out my phone, still recording, still warm in my pocket. I opened the folder labeled Dad Evidence and handed it over. "You'll want to hear this," I said. They did. The officers stepped into the kitchen with my phone, played back just one clip. The call where he threatened me, cursed at me, told me I'd regret speaking out. And in that instant, everything changed. The charm cracked. The act dissolved. He tried to interrupt, tried to say it was fake, that I'd edited it, but the officers weren't buying it. They turned to him, cuffs already out. "Sir, you're under arrest for violation of a protective order, criminal trespass, and verbal threats." Click, click. The sound of the handcuffs echoed louder than anything I've ever heard. He tried to make eye contact with me on the way out. I didn't give him that satisfaction. I looked past him, through him, because I wasn't afraid anymore. He shouted something over his shoulder, something about betrayal, about being my father. But that word didn't hold weight anymore. Not from him. A father protects, a father listens, a father loves. He did none of that. Karen stood frozen in the hallway, mouth half open, eyes wet. She didn't say a word. And honestly, I didn't need her to. Not anymore. That night, the silence in the house was different. It wasn't heavy or dangerous. It was calm, still, safe. For the first time in years, I slept with the door unlocked. Because the monster wasn't just gone. He was believed. And when the system finally listens, that's when healing truly begins. But my story wasn't over. Because now that I had the truth, it was time to share it with the world. The next morning, I opened my laptop with hands that didn't shake. I had everything I needed. Audio files, copies of the videos, my mom's voice from the past, and my own story typed out in one long document titled "The Truth He Tried to Bury." I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't doing it for views. I was doing it because silence nearly killed me. And I knew. I couldn't be the only one. So I created a new YouTube account. No name, no face, just a black and white profile picture and one sentence in the bio. For the kids who were never believed. I uploaded the first video, my voice narrating over blurred footage of the house, childhood photos, journal entries, even pieces of the police report. I kept it raw, real. No music, no filters, just truth. And I hit publish. For a few hours, nothing happened. A few views, one like. I walked around the house like a ghost, waiting for, I don't know what. Regret? Panic? But instead, something else showed up. A comment. I thought I was alone. Then another. I have a dad like that too. Thank you for speaking. And then more. Dozens, then hundreds. People from all over the country. Houston, Dallas, New York, Ohio. Kids, adults, even parents who said they saw pieces of themselves or their children in my story. People weren't just watching. They were feeling. Some sent emails. Others shared their own recordings. One girl messaged me and said she'd been trying to get her school to listen for months until she showed them my video. And now they were. It hit me like a tidal wave. My pain had become proof. My voice had become someone else's permission, not to stay broken, but to start healing. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't just a kid with a messed up past. I was a mirror. And in that reflection, others started to see their own courage. I uploaded the second video that night, this one ending with my mom's words. You have to find your own truth, even if it costs you everything. I whispered into the mic. It didn't cost me everything. It gave me back me. And as the views climbed, so did I. From silence into something loud enough to finally be heard. Kamon Bandanyak, Dude La Fin Ban Scene 9.1. Call to Courage Dungchuan. Toilung Motfut. 272. If you made it here, I need you to hear this. You're not alone, not if you've ever felt unsafe in your own home. Not if your voice was silenced, not if your truth was called a lie. I was there. Lost, scared, convinced no one would ever believe me. But someone did. And that changed everything. So now I'm passing that light to you. If this story hit something deep inside you, don't let it stay silent. Comment, share, speak. Because there's power in saying, this happened to me. And there's healing in hearing, me too. We are not broken, we were wounded. And wounds can heal when the truth is spoken. So if you've got a story, tell it. If you've got a voice, use it. Because there's someone out there right now wondering if they're the only one. Let's show them they're not. Subscribe for more stories that matter. And remember this, your voice isn't too much, your truth isn't too late, and you are never alone.